Hello everyone and welcome. Thank you for joining Espresso Tutorials for today's virtual book club meeting. We are joining you today from the United States, Germany, and our authors are in Australia and Brazil today. So we have a very international crowd. My name's Alice Adams and I'll be moderating. Today we're discussing how to pass the SAP ABAP certification exam with authors Paul Baker and Rick Baker. So Paul and Rick, thank you so much for joining us today. I'd like to ask you each to take a few moments and introduce yourselves.
Hello. I'm Rick Baker. I'm one of the authors of the SAP ABAP certification exam book. I've been working in ABAP since 1997, so since the last millennium. I got started when I was working at Shell Gabon. And they sent me off on a SAP course and picked up ABAP then, did an exam in 1999 in Sydney, of which I wrote about in the book. It was a very interesting experience, and I made sure I learned from that for my following exams after that. And I've been working in ABAP pretty much ever since then. And it's a very great thing to be in. It's let me travel all over the world and earn lots of money, and so I'm having a lot of fun with it. Go ahead, Paul.
My name's Paul Baker. I'm Rick's twin brother. We've worked in SAP pretty much from the same time. Me from 1998. I've done a lot of work in workflow, and I work mainly in Australia. But I also had a gig recently training people on how to pass the SAP ABAP certification exam, and that's where this book came from, because I had to put together a big bunch of questions for them, and I thought, ooh, some other people might be interested in this.
So you guys just briefly started to reference this, but can you tell us a little bit more about your book and why you decided to write on this topic?
Yeah, I thought there would be a lot of interest for this. I've seen on SEN that there are loads and loads of questions about certification for SAP in general and ABAP in particular. I think certification is a great thing in the SAP world, because you do get a lot of dodgy characters coming through some of the work sites, and if someone is certified, you know for sure that they have to be pretty good, because that test is not easy to pass.
It's also very difficult to find good exam questions online. You have all these people trying to sell you exam questions, and from what I understand is when you do pay the money and download them, they're completely wrong. They're the wrong format. Sometimes they've even got the wrong answers. It's a bit of a waste of time, and yet for very little money you can have all these high quality answers that have been tested on many unsuspecting guinea pigs.
Yeah.
Great. So can you tell us a little bit more about the process you took in writing the questions?
Well, we started off, I thought the best way to study for the exam myself was to read the course notes with an eye to writing questions. That way you see some good question opportunity. And there was actually 4 of us doing it, and we were all going to write our own questions and then test each other on it, and then have a big pack of questions at the end. But as these things go, after a few weeks there was only 2 of us left. So I ended up writing most of the questions myself with help from Rick too. But I've tried them out on many students. I think I've had about 30 students pass the ABAP certification exam, and they've all gone through all these questions.
So for those unfamiliar with the format, can you briefly tell us about the format?
Yeah, so it's an exam of 80 questions. You do it locally, usually in an examination centre. It's all done online. The questions are presented to you as a random selection. So even if you're doing it with someone else next to you, they'll probably get different questions. It's from a large pool, so you can't predict what you're going to get. You just tick the boxes on the screen. You've got 3 hours to do it. It's all closed book. You can't ask any questions, can't take any paper in with you, and you get the result at the end straight away. Currently it has a 60% cut cut score on it. So you have to get 60% of the questions right to pass. And if you're just one question short, you fail.
Okay.
Oh, and I also have to point out that it's all multiple choice, and you choose out of either 1, 2, or 3 correct questions out of either 4 or 5 possibilities.
Okay. Great. Thanks for that background. So I understand that you have brought some information to share. Do you guys want to take us through the tips and best practices you brought to share?
Yeah, so one section of the book is about motivation, about why would you become certified? Why would you go to all that expense and take all that trouble? Because it is it's a big job to do. So even if you're a very experienced ABAPer, it's worth doing, because you'll learn a lot about ABAP, even if you think you know it all. If you go reading through all those course notes and doing all those questions, you learn a hell of a lot. And once you have the certification, I mean, it's not going to guarantee you a job, but it will boost your market value quite a lot, because not that many people are certified out in the workplace at the moment. And of course, this certificate is recognized all over the world. You can get a job pretty much anywhere. And once you've gone through all that stuff and you've aced the exam, it really gives you a boost to your confidence and gives you a lot more authority when you're arguing with your colleagues about a point of fact with ABAP. And of course, it is expensive, but if it just gets you one job or one contracting job, me being a contractor, the exam will pay for itself many, many times over. So it's a fantastic investment.
And I've been in the opportunity of interviewing people for jobs, and it's true that certification itself will not get you a job. But if you're competing against people who are not certified, I will definitely go for the certified person first.
Yep. So the next thing to consider, once you've decided you do want to do it, are you ready to undergo that process? So you can't do it from scratch. You can't just walk in and say, okay, I want to get a job in ABAP, I'm going to go for my certification. You have to go to SAP Education and do the basic ABAP training at least, BC 400 and 401, preferably not a lot more, maybe the academy. And then you also need some hands-on experience. You've got to sit in that chair, just like that hamster, and do at least 2 years of full-time ABAP experience, because a lot of the questions cover things that you can only know by practical knowledge. It's not even in the books. And all the things that we're asserting here about this exam, about certification in SAP, it's true not just for ABAP, I think for pretty much any certification exam. You need that experience.
Yes, you can use the tips that you pick up in this book for many other exams. I've done other exams as well, and it's all very much the same.
Yep.
So you would recommend that someone have at least 2 years of full-time ABAP experience before they even study and attempt to take the exam?
Yeah, that is ideal. I've seen people attempt to do it with less experience. I had to coach some of them. Some of them had pretty much no ABAP experience, and they did get through, but it was a really hard slog, and most of them failed the first time. So it's better to just wait. I mean, you can do it, but it's better to just wait and get that experience under your belt before you try.
Okay.
All right, and these are the study tips. So SAP have put all the course notes that you need for this exam into 2 large volumes, and so you should get them and have a cup of coffee and sit and read every page of those notes, and take notes yourself and write out your own questions. You have to make sure that you cover all the topics. There's one big topic in there that maybe some ABAPers aren't familiar with, called WebDimpro, and I know a lot of my students said, I'm not going to bother learning that, I never use it, I'm just going to skip it. But it's a large part of the test, 10%, and I saw a lot of people fail because they didn't come to grips with it. So the general tip is, don't think that you can skip anything. And then again, this business about composing your own questions, that helps a lot in the study process. Otherwise, you just find yourself zooming over the pages without taking it in. And if you can do it as a team, that's great. Great for motivation. And once you've got all that, find some really good questions to practice on to get familiar with the format.
In the book, there are also many other study tips. One of my favorite, one that really helped me, was to actually set the date of the exam, and then you know what you're studying towards. Otherwise, you just keep putting it off and putting it off, because it's not really a fun thing to do, but it's a very necessary thing to do. So set that date and aim towards it.
That's a good tip. I spent a year going through those notes before I sat the exam.
So
I used them as a sleeping aid.
So on that note, how long do you think that people typically study before they take the exam? Like how many months?
Oh, once they've decided to do it, yeah, I'd say, I don't know, maybe 3 months. You could do it. You could do it in less if you're doing it full time. If you're doing it full time, you could do it in some weeks.
Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
but it's usually not full time. You're doing it at work. You just got to read it on the bus on the way to work. Yeah.
So are there employers that support or pay for the exam, or is that typically something that someone handles on an individual basis?
Yeah, well, contractors have to do it in their own time. Employees, especially government employees, they get to take weeks, sometimes months off to do it. That's what the Australian government was doing. They had a big push to get everyone certified who was working in SAP in the Australian government, and so they gave them as much time off as they wanted to do it, which was pretty great. Great for them.
That's fantastic.
You'd have to ask your employer to see what the deal is. I've heard of some places where your employer will pay for it, but only if you pass, not if you fail, which is a great motivator. And also, I didn't have to pay for my exam at all, because luckily enough, I was a member of SCN, and I was a topic leader 1 year when they decided to actually give something for it. And what did they give? Free certification. 1 free exam.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Good incentive to be involved with SCN.
What do they give now?
That's right. And by the way, they give nothing. And by the way, a little certificate you can print out. But an exam, if anybody's wondering, costs about $500, and it can only go up. So go ahead and do it now.
And when you get it, they send you a beautiful certificate in the mail, and they also send you a little logo that you can stick onto your CV, which is very valuable.
Okay. So this next question is a 2-part question. So what's the cut score? And then what happens if you don't pass the exam?
All right, so the cut score can change, but for the last 3 years or so, it's been 60%. So that means that you have to get 60% of the questions right. There's 80 questions, which means you have to get 48, at least 48 right. 47, you fail. 48, you pass. If you fail the exam, and this has happened to a lot of my students, if you fail the exam, you can resit it, and I always advise them to get straight back on that horse and sit it as soon as possible, because often they only miss out by a couple of questions, or sometimes more. But it's better to do it before you start losing all the knowledge that you built up. And if you fail again, the second time, you can then retry once more, but after that, you have to wait until the next release before you can sit the exam again. So the current release for ABAP is 7.5. You'd have to wait for 7.6 or whatever the next one is.
Yep, it's a good way to have a solid strategy going into the exam.
Yeah, for sure. And also other tips like, make sure you don't drink too much water before the exam if you're nervous, because toilet breaks are fully supervised.
I assume you're joking.
No.
You're not?
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and also, one of my students told me that they had a bad cold on the day and they couldn't change the timing of it, so they went in with all these tissues, and then the proctor of the exam pulled apart their whole tissue pack, looking at every single tissue to make sure there were no notes on them.
Oh, wow.
Yes,
Yeah,
SAP goes to extraordinary.
Okay.
SAP goes to extraordinary lengths to make sure people don't cheat. You go in there, there's no paper, there's no pens. Well, all you get is a bit of plastic and a felt pen that you can write on, so that you can't take it with you. You have to put everything in a locker. They're constantly walking behind you, staring at you. And there's people sitting around you doing completely different exams.
Okay.
So yeah, we've said in the book, if you're thinking of you're trying to cheat in any way at all, or help yourself along, or write something on your arm, just forget about it. It's just all study, 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 and they're very serious about it.
Okay. We're all set with our. So much for writing the book and also for sharing a little bit more about the ABAP certification guide today. We do plan on making a recording of the book club meeting available on the Espresso Tutorials blog, and you can expect to see that in the next week or so. We've also set up a special discount on the print version of the book, and that's good for $5 off. I've included the link here as well. So Paul and Rick, both so much. Do you have any parting words of wisdom?
Yeah, I don't know. Have a bit of fun with it, and don't get too stressed about it. I've seen everyone get really stressed about the exam, but it's not that big a deal. You can always sit it again. But it certainly is a great feeling to pass. Fantastic.
And if you're somebody out there who doesn't know anything about ABAP at all, but has always dreamed of becoming an ABAP person after seeing some online ads for ABAP programmers, you could always get this book, which is very cheap, and it'll give you a very good idea of what ABAP is about. And you can read through those questions, you can think, okay, if I can answer those questions, then I'm really on my way. Because sometimes I hear about subjects and I think, I don't know anything about that. So it really helps me to focus if I can see what sort of exam questions there would be. So it's a good stocking stuffer for Christmas.
I
like that. The Christmas wish list. Thank you guys both so much. This has been really great.